can you go? Come unto me, Jesus. Believers hearken to the Master's call, heeding his blessed consolations. Spiritual instructors repeat it in order to communicate vibrations of spiritual comfort to their listeners. Everyone listens to the words of Christ, who invites the troubled mind and the tormented heart to seek his refreshing embrace. However, if it is easy to hear the repeat, if it is easy to hear and repeat the Lord's "Come unto me," how difficult the goal to him is. Here, the Master's words are poured out like a vitalizing balm, but the bonds of immediate gratification are just too strong. There, the divine invitation is heard amidst promises of renewal for the redemptive journey, but the prison of discouragement isolates the spirits behind its unyielding bars. Yonder, the call of the Most High soothes the sorrows of the disillusioned soul, but breaking free from obstacles comprised of people and things, situations, and seemingly pressing private interests is almost impossible. Jesus, our Savior, opens his loving, compassionate arms to us. A life focused on him becomes enriched with imperishable values, and in the shade of his heavenly teachings, we press onward through sanctifying toil towards our universal homeland. All believers may hear his consoling appeal, but very few show themselves to be valorous enough in the faith to go in search of his company. In short, it is very pleasant to hear the "Come to me." However, can you truthfully say that you can go?
As we are about to start our meeting today, present as we are in this ambient, ourselves and all of those in the Spirit who are gathering with us, this ambient prepared by those who anticipated us, the enlightened beings, the benefactors, our friends in the Spirit, who are here to help all of us throughout this study today, understanding a bit more about the natural laws of life, understanding a bit more about ourselves as immortal beings, as spirits as we all are, divine creatures in essence, beings essentially of light and love. And we now refer to our Master Jesus. May we all focus on his serene face, asking his blessings amongst every and each one of us here, blessing us with your peace, with your light, and with your love. And we start our meeting today expressing our gratitude towards God, the creator of everything and everyone. Our gratitude for Jesus, for his teachings that helps us to enlighten our hearts and minds, and our gratitude for the superior beings who are loving us, caring us, and helping us in our journey of evolution. Our gratitude for this incarnation, for this process of learning which we are granted, gratitude for our parents, gratitude for everything that we are facing in our lives, understanding that the experiences are processes helping to activate within us the superior values, the virtues, with our hearts and minds connecting towards God, goodness, and towards God, Jesus, and enlightened beings, we start our meeting today. So be it. Welcome everyone, all of us here who are incarnate and all of those who are present in spirit. May we all feel embraced by the enlightened beings who are here with us as we carry on as immortal beings and students about Spiritism or about the natural laws of life. We are within the chapter, the law of progress, which we are studying for some weeks already. As immortal beings, the law of progress helps us to understand that that is one of God's laws, helping us that we are in the law of progress throughout our evolution process, and everything in life is constantly moving, evolving, therefore progressing. We are within the chapter, the law of progress, under the subtitle, Spiritism's influence on progress. What comes to our minds regarding the subtitle, Spiritism's influence on progress? Us, as immortal beings, as students of Spiritism, because we are all learners, what comes to our minds? Spiritism's influence on progress. My question is, what is the influence of Spiritism on progress? How does Spiritism influence the progress? According to what we learned so far. Of course, our learning carries on, but what we already assimilated.
I think most of all in our attitudes, how we can change our attitudes and how this is going to influence the environment and other people.
Okay, our attitudes. What else?
I think that Spiritism, being the doctrine of the spirits, which helps us to assimilate better Jesus' teachings, has actually a great impact on the progress, on our progress, or the humanity progress, which are us, immortal beings, because it helps us to realize that we are immortal beings and we are full of capacity. However, we need to activate these seeds that we bring within, and bringing the focus to us helps us to become more, to get the autonomy back to ourselves. So being responsible for our development, we are going to help others as a natural extension of what we have learned. So I think that it is very important that we realize it.
What else comes to our minds that Spiritism influences the progress?
Better understanding of God's laws.
Better understanding about God's laws.
Better understanding
And
about...
let me just say that the better understanding about God's laws helps us to understand what regarding our progress, or regarding the process of progress. What is the major point? The center focus. Our evolution, God's law. Our evolution happens according to what? God's laws refer to the center point of what?
My effort and my responsibility.
Okay, what else? Love. We as humanity, we need to evolve on the two wings, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it is intellectual intelligence and the morals. So the law of progress will refer to the moral laws of life, which will help us to progress morally, isn't it? Yeah? Because we evolved already intellectually quite a lot, but morally not. And the moral helps us to develop our emotional dimension according to God's laws. Yeah? Where we learn the virtues to be more fraternal, more solidarious, to diminish the differences between us. Because in the end of the day, we are all brothers and sisters in humanity. Is that okay? Would you like to add anything?
No, because what I would say that we have got the two wings. Even if we develop intellectually, we need the moral aspect to make us understand better our intelligence and also the intellectual wing.
Okay. Okay, let's then start on the question. We carry on to the action chapter on the question 798. Who would like to read it for us?
Will Spiritism become a common belief, or will it only be accepted by a few? It will certainly become a common belief and will mark a new era in the history of humankind, for it belongs to nature itself. In fact, the time has come in which it must take its place among the other branches of human knowledge. It will nevertheless have to withstand greater struggles, more against personal interests than against conviction, because we must not ignore the fact that there are persons interested in fighting it, some out of self-centeredness, others from purely material motives. Its opponents, however, will become more and more isolated and will finally be forced to think like the others, lest they make themselves look foolish.
Should we explore after here? Later on, read the note. Let's understand the question first, because we are all invited to develop our ability to think, to reflect. Then the question says, will Spiritism become a common belief, or will it only be accepted by few? How do we understand the question? How could we reframe it according to our own words, which could also help others while he is studying with us?
But it's a really good question, because Spiritism brings us at the beginning of the truth, or the understanding of Jesus' teachings, and Jesus said he was the way, the truth, and he made the question like, would it be a common belief? Because if he is the beginning of the understanding of the truth or the God's laws, would it be a common belief for everyone? Or will only be accepted by few? Because we can understand, I think he is related to the progress as well of the people, of the citizens.
What else comes to our minds between lines? What is between lines? We are learning to read between lines, isn't it? What else comes to us? Will Spiritism become a common belief, or will it only be accepted by few? What do we understand? Common belief or accepted by few?
I think that here as well it is regarding to the progress of humanity, the understanding that every time that we understand God's laws, even if it's a little bit, we become open for the learning. And in the Spiritism, it is open to everyone, because there is no religion. There is no specific, the best religion. But Spiritism helps us to understand that we do not need rituals, we do not need like this kind of things. And this is, how can I say, this is something that helps us to become freer from our own selves. So, yeah.
Okay, what else?
I think there are other things about understanding on a better way God's laws. Because
And why do we not understand so far?
Because of our interest, personal interest, because
The personal interest leads us to what? Where we are coming from?
primitive.
From a materialistic viewpoint, isn't it? From a materialistic perspective, which we all are emerging throughout our evolutional pathway. From a materialistic perspective, will we have more or less understanding about natural laws? Less. And is that temporarily or not? Temporarily. Why? Because we are under the law of progress. So even if I stayed for centuries within the materialistic viewpoint, living my life accordingly, sooner or later I will be changing those, because that is God's will towards every one of us. Okay? Is that okay? So now let's explore what the enlightened spirits are teaching us, for us also to understand. They start by answering. It will certainly become a common belief and will mark a new era in the history of humankind, but it belongs to nature itself. How do we understand the first bit of the phrase, of the answer? Why do they say it will certainly become a common belief?
Isn't that because of what you said? Because it's the way of progress. We will progress to leave the materialism point of view and see the spiritual world and accept and embrace the God law.
Okay, yes, correct. Because we are all under the law of evolution, we are all evolving. Doesn't matter if we stay for centuries within the materialistic viewpoint of life, but the reality is because we all have been created by God, simple and ignorant, and since that moment we are connected with His essence, and we get to know Him through His laws in this stage where we are. So even if I don't believe temporarily, or because of my unconsciousness, or because of my resistance, or whatever it is, that is only temporary. Sooner or later, I will be moved by His love, who is the greatest power in the universe, which is helping everything and everyone to evolve.
I was thinking in the same way, we can't hold the truth.
No.
We can't hold what is according to the truth. Actually, the doctrine, the Spiritism doctrine is progressive. Therefore, we understand a little now, but we will understand much better as much as we evolve, as much as we also open ourselves emotionally and psychically to understand and to live accordingly to God's laws.
Okay. What do we understand about New Era?
It's interesting when the Spirit's book was written, the science would never accept a spiritual world or the spiritualist idea. And nowadays we see science moving forward and researching about or getting conclusions that are not just related to the material world, but there's something beyond this. I think it's really interesting.
And why is science moving towards to the spiritual aspect? Why?
Why? Because I think they're investigating. Science is always investigating nature, and nature. You get to a point where you see that you get to a conclusion that it's not just matter. Is not just everything in the universe. I don't know. You see so many different aspects in the universe and things that we don't know. So we don't know. You were talking about the truth, and we don't know the whole truth. So
I think that it's interesting because when I was reading it, certainly become a common belief that okay, it will become because it is regarded to the natural laws, and will mark a new era. And the new era is the era of the Spirit. That's why. But I was reflecting it because we know that in general we do not need the phenomena anymore, because the greatest phenomena is the moral changing, which is within us. However, some of us still need the phenomena, and it's interesting because in the school in this country, not far from here, it is happening again. So the dancing tables and these kind of things, but they are doing research and investigations. The most, how do I say the ones that do not believe? Not incredible, skeptical ones. The scientists which are skeptical, they say,
how can that?
No. Yes, we can prove now that there is a spirit. So I was listening to Haroldo saying about this, and he was saying we don't need it anymore. But some of us we still need the phenomena, but with another perspective, a perspective of the science proving.
Yes, it is
the life after death.
Yes, it's helping us to come closer to us. Because the new era, which you said, it is spiritual, but we could also say the new era of humanity is moral, is focused on the moral development, on the moral evolution. evolution. And of course it goes via to understanding the level of the immortality of the soul. And that comes up now gradually, because we as humans, we are spirits reincarnated, we don't have the power, or we don't hold the power to impede the progress. That will happen despite of our beliefs. But those who are receptive, they are all of us, either in science, either in whichever field of knowledge, we are all called to be instruments of this new era, to build that reality, to live, to present, to talk about the immortality of the soul, about life after death, about God's love towards every one of us, and that God's laws govern everything and everyone. And that is quite freeing from within. New era for sure. It's not the end of the world, as some may say and predict. It is the end of an old era and then start in a new era where the values of the virtues will come more and more in evidence. Yeah? And then they carry on. In fact, the time has come in which it must take its place amongst the other branches of human knowledge. How do we understand now the sequence of the phrase? In fact, the time has come in which it must take its place amongst the other branches of human knowledge.
I think if we continue what Father was saying regards like matter, like we are discovering that matter is not only what we thought it was. Matter is not only something that is there, we've got much more types of matter. And then it is a way to discover what is beyond of all of it. And who is beyond all of this? And then another thing that came to me, and that is very, for me, is a good example, is to go to the planet, because when you start thinking of it, we can see that a human is trying to understand or trying to expand his knowledge, and is it like the spiritual world is knocking our doors, so if I can put it this way, like is it glimpsing our eyes for us to actually, it's not glimpsing, it's in front of our eyes, the spiritual world and the spiritual reality.
The subitem is Spiritism's influence on progress. Now, will Spiritism influence all the branches of knowledge in human existence? Yes, this is what you're talking about. Not only medicine, not only scientific level, psychological, education, all the different branches of knowledge. That is what the subtitle is about. Is Spiritism's influences on progress. When they say here, in fact, the time has come, not will come, in which it may take its place amongst the other branches of human knowledge. Spiritism will influence and is influencing already all the different branches throughout the world. Okay? And then carry on. It will nevertheless have to withstand great struggles, more against personal interest than against conviction. Because you must not ignore the fact that there are persons interested in fighting it, some out of self-centeredness, others from purely material motives. How do we understand that? How could we develop that now? What comes to our minds? As immortal beings as we are, as students of Spiritism, what comes to our minds?
I think it will face struggles because Spiritism invites us to get out of our comfort zone, and every time we have to do it, it is a struggle.
Yes, and what would be your comfort zone, or what could be your comfort zone?
Keeping the same habits.
Keeping the same habits, living the life in the same way as everybody else does, from a materialistic viewpoint, yes, from a selfish point, because the materialistic viewpoint is pretty much based on selfishness and pride, isn't it? And what is the most visible signal of our imperfection? We studied in the Spirit's book on the other day, the personal interests. And what are the personal interests that holds us back, that impedes?
Everything we do towards our
Okay, and let's explore examples. It's correct, but in in general, but specifically, what would that mean on our way of behaving in the world?
Controlling personal interests, like to have the control, to have the power, to have the money.
Okay, what else? I work to have more and more money, definitely, because that is a signal that I'm attached to matter, instead of focusing also developing my spiritual aspect. And then if I focus too much on that, for sure, I'm very attached to those values, and I'm losing less time to spiritualize myself in relation to matter when I'm here. What else?
When we do things expecting something, like wanting to be recognized and wanting to be successful in a way that we do not to yourself, but to
So we want to be recognized by humans.
Yeah.
Yeah? And then what we learn in Spiritism, if we walk towards that pathway and we are really recognized by humans, what happens when we leave the body? Will we be recognized by God? That is what is a very important point for us really to now move and choose to move in terms of serving humanity without expectations from the ego level almost to be recognized by humans. Yeah? That activates different values within us.
Yeah, I think
Which kind of value would we need to develop?
For me, what is the biggest struggle is like not to hide myself behind the doctrine, behind this idea of being a good person, of being developing all these characteristics in myself, but like going
To be. Yes, to
really
be a being of goodness,
Yeah.
to develop the aspects as the gospel teaches us of the being of goodness.
and not using the teachings and the doctrine as a mask.
Okay?
That's I think the struggle, one of the struggles of the doctrine of the Spiritism itself, as we move on, as we try to express this or to practice this, it has to be real, authentic to ourselves, otherwise it's going to be
Yes, correct.
a great mistake.
You want to say something? Sarah?
Yes, two examples came to my mind. I would say indifference and embarrassment.
For sure. How can we perceive our indifference?
For me, when I know I could help, but then I just choose not to and just carry on.
So we are talking about the indifference is connected to the moral indifference, to the moral laziness, isn't it? Because we came back to earth to help to move the progress. Then we know that we could do better, but we ignore it. Yes, it is the moral laziness, as the superior spirits tell us.
Can I also add what Cynthia said about getting out of our confidence zone?
Comfort zone.
Yeah. I'm talking about myself in this case, but not long ago, I was brought up not learning to think about things, but just accept. And Spiritism make us or teach us to think, not just accept, to understand, and then accept or not. So I think that's one of the things that will clash to a lot of people. I mean, you will encounter a lot of difficulty there, because first of all, you need to accept that you don't know how to think, and then you need to accept that people will help you towards learning how to think for yourself, by yourself.
And they will challenge my old belief systems, and they will touch my pride and selfishness. Isn't it?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. Who are you to tell me? But you are right to say Spiritism is here to help humanity, which we all are part, to learn to think. That is inviting us for us to activate our superior potentialities, our capacities to think for ourselves, to understand the natural laws within us, because we all bring them already since our creation. It just needs to be stimulated, and that is the inner power that we carry. And Jesus and the enlightening spirits are inviting us to do that, and in that way we are freeing us from within. When we choose to do good, it's not because someone is telling me I choose to do because I understand the natural laws of life, and knowing consciously, not just knowing intellectually, but on an emotional level, what that means for my existence in an ongoing process. And also helps us to understand the laws of cause and effect. It helps us to understand the responsibility that evolution doesn't happen if I just go to a Spiritist center, but evolution happens when I learn to understand God's laws and choose to live accordingly. That I stop to focus on others and bring the focus back to me to develop myself in relation to the superior values. That I become more available for the superior beings on earth, that goodness and that Spiritism can flow through us as instruments of favoring the progress. They need us here. It's not just because they are there, they want everything to move. God is in charge of moving forward to progress, that we are absent in this progress. That is laziness. That is irresponsibility. We have part to play in the process, and very actively. Yeah?
We also need to stay here because we need those experiences to not to build up the character, good character, to build up our sentiment and our knowledge and our new understanding, new thoughts, using our free will and choosing correctly now. We also need those experiences.
Yes, we are very important in this process, but not to stay in a comfort zone, in a laziness or a procrastination process. We agreed with Jesus to be here and to promote his teachings in learning and also living them. And that helps us to dematerialize ourselves because we are freely choosing to spiritualize ourselves more. Yes? Anything else that's come to us? Or can we move on? I lost when we finished. We finished in motifs, wasn't it? Its opponents, however, will become more and more isolated and will finally be forced to think like the others, lest they make themselves look foolish. How do we understand that phrase? Who are the opponents?
Materialistic.
The materialistic as could be any one of us, isn't it? Because we are all immortal beings. We are all learning on earth. We are back here. And if I'm even within Spiritism, but I'm very attached to matter, I could be one of those, can I? Because my reading, my interpretation of Spiritism will be very materialistic viewed.
For me, it came to my head that no one is left behind.
Okay. Why not?
Because of progress and because God wouldn't let one of his children behind.
And why wouldn't God leave any of his children behind?
Because he doesn't give priority to anyone. He treats everyone the same.
And why does he treat everyone the same?
Because of
Even if we are rebellious in a certain time and we refuse the invitation, but he carries on loving every and each creature.
Can I come back a little bit? When they say personal, more against personal interest than against conviction, can I say that what holds me back is much more my emotions than my convictions?
Well, I guess the convictions, they are rooted within the emotions. What holds us back, we could easily say pride and selfishness.
Yeah.
That is what is in the bottom line. Because our beliefs, our convictions, they are also, let's say, rooted in our emotions or in our emotional intelligence through what we learned so far. And as we understand, we came for centuries and centuries within materialism, therefore what are we carrying as records on our emotional intelligence? Is more referring to my personal interest, to get more money, to get more power, to work that I get more and more, and the power on earth is if you have a lot of money in the bank, if you have a lot of cards, and so on and so forth. If you present yourself in a fashionable way, is everything external, isn't it? So we need now to become aware of those inner concepts and freely choose in activating the free will responsibly to re-educate ourselves in a loving way.
Because this is actually what is happening with the medicine, for example. You know, So most of them, they actually know that there is something else, and they know what it is, but they don't want to say that they are wrong, because they will need to change.
It's
This is because of pride.
Yes. There's Dr. Sérgio Felipe de Oliveira, which is a psychiatrist and also scientist. He always says that because he searches deeply within Spiritism, within the books of André Luiz, and yet also is a doctor. And he always says, science already find it, but what is impeding to make that public is to recognize, well, we did a mistake, or we didn't acknowledge part that is more than that. But that will happen anyway, and we are very close now. If it doesn't come from the center, it's happening from outside, as it is already worldwide. Those who are not in the center, but those who are around. And it comes closer and closer, and then we don't have other way unless to surround ourselves.
Kardec puts in his the book of mediums. I was studying last night, and he was saying that you need to touch someone on the heart and not on the mind. Because if you touch on the heart, it will change, but if you touch on the mind, if you try to reach the mind, it will try to question you back, and it can become like a duel. So it is on the emotional aspect that has to be something done.
I think the intellect is important to understand, but it will consolidate or become concrete when we really touch the heart, the emotional level. Because those who still are, as it happened with us, or it still is happening from a materialistic viewpoint, what is helping us gradually to understand God's laws? Isn't it studying about it? And then we go, and then we choose to go and to live. But it is, yes, because even I'm very intellectual, I may refute what is presented to me. I may articulate in a, let's say, dual way, yeah?
Do you think that pride and selfishness is most related with our fears?
How is that for you? Fears of being wrong?
Yeah, fears of everything. And it's the way that we deal with this. It's like the way that we find to protect ourselves.
I think from the ego level, yes.
Yeah.
Because the fear is always to protect the ego, the immature aspect of us, the part that hasn't developed in relation to the natural laws. Because when we focus in relation to the natural laws, are we not all learners in an ongoing process? When we touch that inner core of ourselves, but we need to do the shifting from the ego towards the self, then we free ourselves. But otherwise we will be protecting us, and we will be fearful. And when I'm fearful, what will be my emotional response if someone presents something which I haven't acknowledged? What could be my response? Acceptable or reactive? Usually reactive, isn't it? Temporary. But those of us who connect with the self, aren't we not open and flexible to accept, to review, and to learn, and to discuss, and to reflect about it, which is exactly what the Spiritism is inviting us to do. Yeah?
Because I was thinking reflecting upon what he says, because most of the time I'm feared to surround myself because of my pride. I can't accept that there is someone beyond me. I can't accept someone superior than me. And in that way, I fear myself to surround.
It is, we need to think about, even us or others who are with us, imagine centuries and centuries cultivated into materialistic viewpoint. Centuries and centuries living in a prideful way. I know what is right. And I hold myself in a crystallized way. And now suddenly I'm challenged. That is not so. Will that be easy to lose up, to let go? It will be a struggle for us. But actually the struggle when we accept that, well, this is what I believed so far. Let me consider to think about. When we open ourselves in that moment, we learn, we feel internally that space of freedom which starts. There is no reason to fear. There is no reason, which quite often happens, that the spirits think if they accept God, or if they now change their belief systems, that they are weak. And we are weak when we are under pride and selfishness. When we accept that we are starting in our journey, and we know very little about the natural laws, then we become strong on the emotional level. And then we will not have that reactive mood in relation to the new viewpoints. We will be receptive and learning about them. Is that making sense?
It's a wrong concept, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because we think that we are weak when we are going to surround ourselves to a superior thing. However, millennials have been focusing ourselves as millennials, thinking that we are strong and get stronger when we have the power.
When we are aggressive, when we have the last word, as we learn. But if we study dimension previous in history, if we study our own evolution throughout history, wasn't that not so in the past? Who was the strongest one in the past?
Who had the power?
The one who has the power was not aggressive, who has the last word, and knowledge was power, so we are keeping power and others are in ignorance.
The revenge is a way that you find to protect yourself in this way, being aggressive and being.
Yeah.
If someone humiliates me, I need to do something against this to protect myself and not just understand the situation and accept that that the person is in a different level, differently than me.
Correct.
But we always, our option is to react.
And why do we feel humiliated?
We need to feel superior than the other.
And why do we feel humiliated? Can someone really humiliate us? Why not?
Because if I am not connecting with that, so that's okay. It is the person that is feeling, it's not me. But I needed to become centered. I needed to develop my self-confidence, self-love, to connect myself with my divine being, with God. So then, yes, I will feel okay. It doesn't matter what comes from outside, because we do not have control of what comes from outside.
And what is the major virtue that we are required to develop? Humbleness. We become reactive because of our pride and selfishness. When we develop humbleness, we don't have that reactive response anymore, because we flexibilize ourselves within through our concepts, through our way of being. We understand that we don't have control what comes from the external agents towards us, but we can learn to have complete control internal, because internally God gave us a tool of freedom for us to develop goodness within, the inner wisdom.
And that is the great feeling.
Yeah.
And also in this position, when we are centered and we can see that there is like a disturbance around, we know that it is going to be temporary, because only good it is permanent.
Correct. And when there is a disturbance, what is life inviting us to do? Because we are in a planet of trials and expiations. So are there turbulences around? Everywhere, isn't it? And what are we invited? Because we are within them, isn't it? What are we invited?
To keep calm and carry on.
To develop our calmness, to develop our virtues. Because we are not virtuous yet, we are training. To develop patience, to develop calmness, to observe what we think, to observe what we feel, to train the superior values within that situation. As Daniela said, the situations are transitory, and the objective of those situations, or us to be in those situations, is for us to grow spiritually, to mature ourselves psychologically and emotionally. This is why we say that everything is correct within God's mouth for that purpose. Isn't Cynthia?
Yeah.
You like that?
I was thinking about this discussion we just had now, because I was reading a book about social intelligence, because I have a few problems like interacting with people. And the author gave an example which was so interesting to me, because he talked about a person who, someone else came to this person and started to criticizing him. And then instead of being aggressive or reacting, he said he acknowledged his weakness, and he said, yes, that's true what you're saying, but I know you were very good with it. Would you be able to help me? And the other person just was disarmed, and he said, oh, yes, of course I can. And then they just became friends. And it was just like 1 minute, one conversation, and that's it.
Yeah.
And I think in terms of, I know Spiritism is crucial in terms of the developing the moral aspect. But I also find Spiritism very rational. And I think if you read the books again and again of Kardec, just the codification, it is extremely rational. And only if you don't study does it make sense. Because if you study deeply, it does make sense.
It is rational, and rational is connected with emotion. When we study more and more, initially sometimes we think there are two different wings, two different aspects, but they are interconnected. As more as we go deeper, more we understand. What we need to challenge is where we are within our rational way of, let's say, being in the world. Because we refer to the question in the Spirit's book, I can't remember which one it is, I think it's 625, if I'm not wrong, which is telling us why it's not always reason infallible. And the answer is, it's not always infallible because of our poor education and our pride and selfishness. So now when we read more and more willingly, it's not because someone is imposing, that's a free choice, and we really want to assimilate, we want to understand more, we can perceive our, let's say, wrong education belief systems, and we freely choose to re-educate ourselves. And that is what motivates us to move forward, because we understand that we are not a body, we are immortal beings. We understand gradually that we are within God's laws, and the laws all, although they have different names, they are summarized in love. And then again, rational is not disconnected from the emotional. But what I think Spiritism is helping us to free us is from the intellectualism, which is different and have reason to think about things.
And I think Spiritism also, regarding what was studied on Monday, the point of view, it helps us to think strategically. Because you mentioned, well, how can we be like the craziness that is all happening and just go through it? Because Spiritism helps us if we start from the right point of view.
Correct. Understanding life from a spiritual perspective and not from a materialistic viewpoint, then I understand what we limit in a limited way called tragedies is part of the law of progress on individual basis, on a collective basis, on a society basis, that we are all under God's laws, one of them called the law of cause and effect. So every event is not perceived from a reductionist view, but from a higher sphere, which is love, that is moving, that is guiding, that is helping everything to move, to change for better. Yeah? Okay. Can we now go through the note within the question 798? Should we go through gradually? So we start then. Ideas are only transformed over time, never suddenly. They weaken from generation to generation and end up disappearing along with those who have professed them, who are replaced by other individuals imbued with new principles, as is the case with political ideas in particular. What comes to us now? Apart from what we explored already, what are we taking from Allan Kardec's notes referring to the question 798? Any idea? They weaken generation from generation. How will that happen?
A huge comment before that when they say ideas are only transformed over time and never suddenly. So just always thinking, if I don't change suddenly, and my ideas don't change suddenly, so collectively ideas won't change suddenly as well. So we take time for me to understand, take time for me to try to apply it, take time to me to get new experiences. But that time I don't choose, because I can make an effort to make it easily for my own self, or postponing.
So it takes time for us to re-educate ourselves. Within the school of Spiritism, when we talk about that we are, within the natural laws of life, learning to re-educate ourselves, is because we educated us so far, isn't it? We all have our belief systems, how life functions, who we are, and those, let's say, values, they need to be now re-evaluated or updated or upgraded according to what we are learning and perceiving now. And that happens through generation. Because if I cease to stay stuck temporarily, others are coming with more wisdom, with more willingness, and they advance, isn't it? But I will not be left behind, as Thais said previously. Sooner or later, I will also adjust myself. We already are in the flesh, or even if we aren't, because God's laws are everywhere and are equal for all of us, we can choose to upgrade ourselves right now in what is possible for us.
Another thing is that we are part of nature, yeah. So nature does not jump, as we know. Everything has the cycle, and we have ours as well. So we are not going to jump our own nature. So it is one step after the other. But what it is, the difference between or among it is that the size of these steps, because it can be like a big step towards the discovering, or it can make like just a little one. But doesn't matter. Any of size of the steps are good because we are going forward. But what I mean by that is that it will depend on us how far or how fast actually we want to do. So to develop ourselves. So this is, I think, is the main
correct.
point.
The speed of the development, the speed of evolution will depend on each one of us, and will depend on what? On us. The willpower, isn't it? Exercising the willpower in a responsible way, which means according to God's laws. And within that, we don't have limits. We don't have limits. We can go far. It depends where we are in choosing to exercise the willpower responsibly.
Because when we were saying about the generations, I thought, and it made more sense to me, why reincarnation is a law of God. Is it a blessed for me as a mortal spirit to refresh my mind, to come and to be more open, to try to understand and accept as well, in emotional or psychically, the God's laws?
Yes, reincarnation is part of God's laws. Why? Because it is impossible for any one of us to understand and re-educate ourselves completely within God's laws in one existence. It is impossible. No one can do that. Therefore, we have one life, and we carry on through different existences, developing ourselves as immortal beings, as divine beings. Correct? Anything else?
I was thinking that we are masters of adapting things to ourselves, to
Our interests?
And so I think the biggest problem with our difficulties in changing or to accepting things is because we don't believe in that, really truly believe. So I think at the moment you do that, you really believe in that, you instantly change it, you change your mind. So we still doubt or have doubts about this thing. So we still like, oh yeah, I'm doing this, but I'm not sure. I believe more in my previous beliefs than the new thing, the new idea.
They said previously that more against personal interest than against conviction. So I'm much more focused on what I will lose materially speaking than accepting or trying to open my mind for new experiences, new spiritual experiences, that I need to let things go and to let myself to new experiences that really probably I will be shaped and they'll be like weak at the beginning, but that's really, as we always say, that's really strong at that moment, and they're really important because that's going to be the first time that I will allow myself to live according to God's laws and to try to live apart a little bit the material life.
I think they said here, some out of self-centeredness. Self-centeredness refers to what? Selfishness. And then they go on. Others from purely material motives. Then it comes back to the personal interest. A lot of us will know it on intellectual level. but we don't know it on the emotional level, where the roots of our personal interests are. And that needs to be changed throughout our evolution. And it will be changed not by others, but by ourselves. Because that will touch the core of us. And only us can access the core, the essence.
I don't want to make the changes, isn't it?
Because it will go back to my personal interests, which are based on the reductionist viewpoints, based on pride and selfishness, and vanity, and my experiences on a materialistic view, which I have the records within myself, on the perispirit. Within Spiritism, understanding that we are essentially spirits. We have a perispirit, which is the spiritual body, and we express ourselves through a physical body. And then those old systems, they are within the perispirit, even if I'm not aware of, they are running my life. And the proposal that Spiritism is offered to us is for us to get to know of those tendencies, of those desires, and re-educate ourselves in a loving way. Because we are responsible, we are the only one responsible for our destinies, for our own history, for our own progress, for our own evolution. Yes? God wants us to potentialize ourselves within and not be someone who is not capable of thinking or acting. He wants us to activate the divine powers within us that we all have. Yeah? And then we carry on. Look at paganism. There are few today who profess the religious ideas of pagan times. Nevertheless, many centuries after the advent of Christianity, they have left behind traces that only a complete renewal of humankind can erase. It will be the same with Spiritism. It has made considerable progress, but for 2 or 3 generations there will still be a phenomenon of incredulity that only time will erase. What are we getting from this part? Where are we in our hearts and minds in understanding that? When they say it has made considerable progress, examples. What comes to our minds in this considerable progress that we already noticed throughout history? As humankind, as humanity. What changed on the moral aspect? What evolved within humanity? Are we still the same as the time of Moses?
I was
So what
regarding
changed?
to the rights,
Human rights?
the human rights, the children's rights. I was thinking about as well that there are a change of the number of people who actually like wars and actually those who are fighting, between among converted commas. So that actually are fighting for not having wars. So these things are changing. So if there is a calamity in another side of the world, so there are people that on the other side of the world that they want to help those people. So these kind of things are changing.
So what is behind that movement?
The moral aspect, the
Which
values.
is expressed within, would I be say,
Fraternity,
solidarity, cooperation, the sensibility towards other human being, sense of brotherhood is increasing, doesn't matter the difference of culture, of religion, we can see that clearly now, isn't it? The sense of brotherhood is exactly what Jesus is teaching us. The different cultures of different religions, we are all children of God, and that is becoming more and more evident now.
When he's always thinking about that, cruelty, aggressiveness already impact us, and like it make us, oh my gosh, how come? So that is this sense of brotherhood that is developing and increasing in all of us. But this is by experiences that we are having and by understanding of God's laws, isn't it?
Yes, and within it's not just understanding God's laws, because when we say understanding God's laws, but what is behind or within understanding God's laws that helps people, us as immortal beings, to become more sensitive towards others' pain? What is happening then?
I'm opening myself emotionally.
Okay.
Compassion.
Sorry?
Compassion.
Compassion. And how do let's think about how do we develop compassion? What needs to happen within us?
That we need to realize that other person is son of God and is my sister or my brother. So we are the same in a sense of God's eyes, but we are unique as immortal beings.
So we are unique, as you said, created in a unique way, but we are all children of God. Would I be right in saying, in order for us to learn to be more compassionate, we need to learn to be more humble? Because what is behind of the lack of compassion? Pride and selfishness, and therefore the indifference, isn't it? Because we are shut down emotionally. So as more as we learn now to develop humbleness and charity in a complex way, it's not just giving something to someone, but charity in a moral aspect of developing the aspects of a good person.
Even it's going to say that the root of it is the self-love.
Self-love, which comes
The
from
root one, sorry.
self-love.
The root one, sorry.
The
root
root
of what?
of compassion and charity that she said.
Yes, and where does self-love come from?
God's love. No. No.
No, yes.
Where does self-love comes from?
Anyone?
Humbleness.
Humbleness. How do we develop self-love? From a materialistic viewpoint, how is it perceived? I could buy a new dress, I could go to travel around the world. I'm loving myself, I'm doing good things for myself on the ego level, yeah? But self-love within Spiritism, where does it come from?
From the development of the virtues.
From the development of the virtues, therefore from within, because the virtues are connecting us with God. Therefore self-love is the ability to carry out our duty in relation to God's will.
I could also say that, following your thought, that the self-love, it is when I feed myself with the love of God.
Yes, and that is only possible when we choose to carry out our duties in relation to God. And we won't have time here to explore, but it will be down to develop obedience and resignation. Okay? So we're coming to the end today. And as always, as we come to the end, we close our meeting with our reflections. In those unique and special moments in our lives, as immortal beings as we all are, let's express our gratitude with our hearts full of joy towards these enlightened moments that has been granted to us by God, the creator of everything and everyone, by Jesus, our master and guide, by the enlightened spirits, the loving beings, our real friends who are with us, favoring our changing process, opening our minds to assimilate new ideas within the theory of reincarnation, considering the immortality of the soul. We are all children of God, loved since our creation, loved everywhere where we are all the time. Let us all choose to progress, to evolve towards the wisdom within that comes from God. Let us all choose to learn to be humble so that we can develop inner wisdom and strengthen ourselves to become instruments of light, instruments of love, and instruments of peace within our families, within our workplaces, within the society where we are, as immortal beings, brothers and sisters in humanity, gathering together with the same purpose, developing brotherhood in our hearts, in our minds, through our actions, today and always. So be it.